Dean here. I'm currently down in central New South Wales at the beautiful Copeton Dam. As the weather starts to cool, I normally head down south and chase the iconic Murray cod. And where better place to do it than in the Copeton Dam? Tackle selection for chasing Murray cod in Copeton, for me, it's all about coming here to catch giant Murray cod. So of course I'm going to run with the Tranx 300 and I run with the HG. The main reason for the HG is you have a lot more control over the lure. You're able to keep that lure up higher when I'm casting to shallow banks, or control the speed if I'm using the live sonar to keep the lure above the fish. So one of my favourite points about the new Tranx HG is the power handle. I often switch out on my other reels on my Corrados to the power handle, but now the new 300 HG already comes with that power handle. For me, that is the easiest way to keep a grip on that reel when you get a big hit from a Murray cod, especially in freezing cold mornings if I'm running gloves. So the rod of choice for me, because I use big baits, is the G Loomis 965 swim bait rod. So it's important to run a rod that at least has the casting capabilities higher than the lure you're going to throw. So don't worry too much about looking for the breaking strain of a rod. Look more for the casting weight versus the weight of the lure that you're going to throw. So the braid I like to use is Kariki 8 Plus in the 50 pound. I like to run at least 50 pound for a couple of reasons. One, you get a snag, you want to try and get your lure off. And two, if you get a backlash, for example, with a heavy bait and you don't have 50 pound, that lure is going to snap off and it's gone. I'm running 60 pound in the O'Shea fluorocarbon. Similarly with the braid, a lot of the reason for going 60 rather than something as low as 30 or 40 is for the size of the bait you're throwing, and if you get a snag trying to get it off. Cod do have slightly abrasive teeth, so you will have some wear on your leader with the 60 pound, but it's still plenty strong enough to land that giant fish. When it comes to throwing big baits, ideally cod get a little bit timid, especially early hours of the morning, low light, everything is calm and quiet. So when you're throwing big baits, I like to sidearm cast, even when I'm fishing flat, shallow banks, so that when the lure hits the water, it's not coming from a great height, it's actually coming from a lower height. If I'm using live sonar, I'll even attempt to catch the lure just before it hits the water. That way I've lost all my horizontal velocity and that lure is only falling, say, 1 to 2 meters onto the water surface. And that way you get a more natural presentation. Probably one of the easiest baits to get into when it comes to chasing Murray cod is your standard paddle tail or running a paddle tail on a swim jig, for example. One of the key reasons for that is being able to modify the weight depending on the time of the day. So early in the morning, I'm only going to run like a ½ ounce weight on a 22 centimetre lure, and that way it stays nice and shallow in the shallows where the fish are without getting hump on the bottom. Then of an afternoon, as the water temp starts to drop and the light starts to change, the fish aren't going to go as shallow as they do in the morning. They'll be sitting a little bit deeper. So that way I run like a 1 ounce head, and you're going to sit your boat a little bit deeper and allow that bait to track a lot deeper than you would in the morning. But just by running those two weights, you can have your morning covered and your afternoon covered. If you're new to targeting Murray cod in impoundments, one of the key things for finding the fish is, as everybody says, you find the bait. So the easiest way to find the bait in Copeton, for example, if you're here in the daytime, you look for shags and pelicans. Pelicans are one of the laziest birds around. You find a bay or somewhere where there are some pelicans holding up, the bait won't be far from there in the mornings. If you come out in the early hours of the morning, say 1 to 2 hours before sunrise, you'll see the crucian carp and bobby cod. They'll be literally darting up to the surface and making little splashes. You can see the other smaller bait fish also flicking on the surface. That is a good sign, if you don't have live sonar, for telling you that there'll be Murray cod in the area at some point. The key and probably the most consistent bite time that there is that first light window. Say from around 10 to 6 till about 7 AM, you have 1 hour where that is the most successful time of day. And what I will say, if you do catch one Murray cod, pay attention to where you caught that cod, because there's a fair chance that is a feeding location on that bank and you'll catch more cod over the next few days out of that exact same spot.